The Oracle of Delphi stood as one of the most powerful and influential institutions in ancient Greece, for over 1,000 years perched on the slopes of Mount Parnassus in the region of Phasis. This sacred sanctuary attracted pilgrims, kings, generals, and common citizens from across the Mediterranean world seeking guidance from the god Apollo himself. The oracle's prophecies shaped the course of Greek history, influenced major political decisions, and affected the outcomes of wars and the founding of cities. The story of Delphi is not merely about religious practice, but about how divine prophecy intertwined with human ambition, politics, and the search for meaning in an uncertain world. The origins of the Oracle of Delphi stretch back into the mists of Greek mythology. According to ancient tradition, the site was originally sacred to Gaia, the earth goddess, and was guarded by a serpent named Python. The god Apollo, seeking to establish his own oracle, slew the python and took possession of the sanctuary. This mythological tale reflects a transition from older earth-centered worship to the Olympian religion centered on Apollo. The Pythian Games were established to commemorate Apollo's victory, and these athletic and musical competitions became second only to the Olympic Games. In importance, the sanctuary gradually developed into a complex of temples, treasuries, and monuments built by Greek city-states to honor the god and display their wealth and piety. The physical setting of Delphi was spectacular and contributed to its mystical reputation. The sanctuary was built on the steep slopes of Mount Parnassus, overlooking a dramatic gorge. Visitors approaching the site would climb a winding sacred way lined with treasuries and monuments before reaching the Temple of Apollo at the heart of the sanctuary. The natural landscape, with its towering cliffs, echoing valleys, and the nearby Castalian spring, created an atmosphere of divine presence. The Greeks believed this location was the Omphalos, or navel of the world, marking the center of the earth itself. A stone monument called the Omphalos stood within the temple, symbolizing this cosmic significance. At the center of Delphi's religious practice was the Pythia, the priestess who served as Apollo's mouthpiece. The Pythia was always a woman chosen from among the local residents of Delphi. Initially, she was a young virgin, but after an incident where a Pythia was assaulted, the role was given to women over 50 years of age who dressed as young maidens. The Pythia underwent purification rituals before entering the inner sanctum of the temple, where she would sit on a tripod positioned over a chasm in the earth, from which vapors were said to rise. These vapors supposedly induced a trance state, allowing Apollo to speak through her. Modern scholars have debated the nature of these vapors, with some geological studies suggesting the presence of ethylene gas, which could produce euphoric effects, while others remain skeptical. The process of consultation at Delphi followed strict procedures and rituals. Those seeking the oracle's advice had to pay a consultation fee called the pelanos, and offer a sacrificial animal, usually a goat. The animal was tested to ensure it was acceptable to the god by sprinkling it with cold water. If it trembled, this was taken as a positive sign. Consultations occurred only on the 7th day of each month during 9 months of the year, with the winter months reserved for Apollo's absence. When Dionysus was said to rule Delphi, the petitioner would submit their question and wait, while the Pythia entered her trance state and delivered Apollo's response. The responses given by the Pythia were often cryptic and ambiguous, requiring interpretation by the priests of Apollo, who served as intermediaries. These pronouncements became famous for their double meanings, and the oracle's reputation was built partly on this ambiguity, which allowed the prophecies to be fulfilled in unexpected ways. The Greeks understood that divine wisdom operated on a different level from human understanding, and the challenge lay in correctly interpreting Apollo's words. This characteristic of Delphic prophecy reflects a sophisticated understanding of fate, free will, and the limitations of human knowledge. One of the most famous prophecies from Delphi involved King Croesus of Lydia, who ruled in the 6th century BC. Croesus was immensely wealthy and contemplated making war against the growing Persian Empire. Before committing to such a momentous decision, he consulted multiple oracles, including Delphi, to test their accuracy. He sent messengers with a deliberately obscure question, asking what he was doing at a specific moment. The Pythia correctly responded that he was boiling a lamb and a tortoise together in a bronze cauldron. Impressed by this demonstration, Croesus sent lavish gifts to Delphi and asked whether he should attack Persia. The oracle responded that if he crossed the Halys River, he would destroy a great empire. Confident in this prophecy, Croesus launched his campaign, but was defeated by the Persian king Cyrus. The great empire that was destroyed was his own. When Croesus complained to the oracle about the misleading prophecy, the priests pointed out that he had failed to ask which empire would be destroyed, and that he had ignored the oracle's advice. To determine who his true allies were, this story became emblematic of the oracle's wisdom and the danger of human presumption. The Oracle of Delphi played a crucial role in Greek colonization during the Archaic period, as Greek city-states sent out expeditions to establish colonies around the Mediterranean and Black Sea. They routinely consulted Delphi for approval and guidance. The oracle would indicate favorable locations, suggest appropriate rituals, and sometimes designate the leader of the expedition. This divine sanction gave legitimacy to colonial ventures and helped resolve disputes about leadership and destination. The oracle's involvement in colonization spread Greek culture, and Delphi's influence across a vast geographic area. Colonies often maintained close ties, with Delphi sending offerings and consulting the oracle on important matters. In the political sphere, Delphi influenced the internal affairs of Greek city-states. When Athens was threatened by the Persian invasion led by King Xerxes in 480 BC, the Athenians consulted the oracle seeking guidance. The initial prophecy was terrifying, predicting destruction and advising the Athenians to flee to the ends of the earth. The Athenian envoys pleaded for a more hopeful response, and the Pythia delivered a second prophecy, mentioning a wooden wall that would remain unconquered. The Athenian leader Themistocles interpreted the wooden wall as referring to the Athenian fleet, rather than the wooden fortifications of the Acropolis. This interpretation led to the decision to evacuate Athens and fight the Persians at sea. The resulting naval battle at Salamis was a decisive Greek victory that changed the course of the Persian wars. This example demonstrates how the oracle's ambiguous prophecies could be interpreted to support particular political strategies. The Spartans maintained an especially close relationship with Delphi, consulting the oracle frequently on matters of war, peace, and internal policy. Spartan kings were required to consult Delphi before undertaking military campaigns, and the oracle's responses could determine whether Sparta would commit its forces to a particular conflict. This relationship gave Delphi significant influence over Spartan foreign policy. The Spartans also received a famous prophecy before the Battle of Thermopylae in 180 BC, when the oracle predicted that either Sparta would be destroyed or one of its kings would die. King Leonidas interpreted this as requiring his sacrifice, and he led the famous 300 Spartans in their heroic stand against the Persian army. Delphi also functioned as a pan-Hellenic institution that transcended the boundaries of individual city-states. The sanctuary was protected by the Amphictyonic League, a religious association of Greek states that administered the site and organized the Pythian Games. This collective governance helped maintain Delphi's neutrality and protected it from being dominated by any single power. The oracle often promoted peace among Greek states and discouraged wars that would weaken the Greek world as a whole. However, Delphi was not always successful in preventing conflict, and its pronouncements sometimes favored particular cities, leading to accusations of corruption and bias. The wealth accumulated at Delphi was extraordinary. Greek city-states and individuals donated treasuries, statues, tripods, and other valuable offerings to honor Apollo and display their piety and success. These treasures were housed in special buildings called treasuries that lined the sacred way, leading to the temple. The treasury of the Athenians, built after the Battle of Marathon, still stands today as a testament to this practice. The sheer quantity of gold, silver, and precious objects at Delphi made target for theft and conquest. Several sacred wars were fought over control of the sanctuary and its wealth. The most famous of these occurred in the 4th century BC, when the Phocians seized Delphi and used its treasures to hire mercenaries, sparking a conflict that eventually involved Philip Roman II of Macedon. The oracle's influence extended beyond purely Greek affairs. Foreign rulers, including Lydian, Persian, and Roman leaders, consulted Delphi seeking Apollo's wisdom. This international recognition enhanced the oracle's prestige and brought exotic offerings from distant lands. The consultation process for foreign rulers followed the same procedures as for Greeks, though their questions often dealt with matters of conquest and empire rather than colonization or internal politics. The oracle's responses to foreign rulers were equally cryptic and subject to interpretation. As Greek philosophy and rational thought developed during the classical period, some intellectuals began to question the oracle's authority. Philosophers like Heraclitus criticized the Sibylline nature of the prophecies, while others attempted to provide natural explanations for the Pythia's trance state. However, even skeptics often maintained a respectful attitude toward Delphi, recognizing its cultural and political importance. Socrates famously cited the oracle when his friend Chaerephon asked whether anyone was wiser than Socrates, and received the answer that no one was wiser. This pronouncement led Socrates to his philosophical mission of examining others' claims to wisdom. The maxims inscribed at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi became fundamental to Greek ethical. Thought the most famous of these were "Know thyself," and "Nothing in excess." These simple phrases encapsulated a worldview that emphasized self-knowledge, moderation, and recognition of human limitations. The Delphic maxims influenced Greek philosophy, and were cited by thinkers from Socrates to the Stoics. The oracle thus contributed not only political prophecies, but also moral and philosophical guidance that shaped Greek culture. During the Hellenistic period, following the conquests of Alexander, the great Delphi's influence gradually declined as Greek political power shifted to larger kingdoms centered in Macedonia, Egypt, and Syria. The oracle continued to function and receive consultations, but it no longer held the same decisive influence over major political decisions. The rise of new religious and philosophical movements also challenged traditional oracle worship, though Delphi maintained its prestige as an ancient and venerable institution. When Rome conquered Greece, Delphi came under Roman control. Roman generals and emperors consulted the oracle and made offerings to Apollo. The Emperor Nero scandalized the Greek world by competing in the Pythian Games and allegedly stealing 500 bronze statues from Delphi. Despite such depredations, Roman patronage helped maintain the sanctuary, and the oracle continued to function into the early Christian era. Some Roman emperors, including Hadrian, were devoted supporters of Delphi and sponsored restoration projects. The Oracle of Delphi finally ceased operations in the late 4th century AD. As Christianity became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire, the Christian Emperor Theodosius issued edicts closing pagan temples and prohibiting pagan worship. The last recorded prophecy from Delphi reportedly told the Emperor Julian that the oracle could no longer speak, and that Apollo's voice was silent. This poignant final message marked the end of over 1,000 years of prophetic activity. The sanctuary fell into ruin and was eventually buried under landslides, and the modern village of Castri. The rediscovery and excavation of Delphi began in the 19th century, when European archaeologists became interested in ancient Greek sites. The French school at Athens conducted systematic excavations, starting in 1892, revealing the spectacular remains of the sanctuary. These archaeological investigations uncovered temples, treasuries, the theater, the stadium, and thousands of inscriptions and artifacts that have greatly enhanced our understanding of how Delphi functioned. The site is now one of Greece's most important archaeological parks and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, attracting visitors from around the world. Modern scholars continue to debate various aspects of the oracle, including the nature of the Pythia's trance state, the accuracy of ancient accounts, and the mechanisms by which the oracle maintained its influence. Some researchers have investigated geological features at the site, searching for evidence of the vapors mentioned in ancient sources, while others focus on the social and political functions of the oracle. As an institution, the Oracle of Delphi represents a fascinating intersection of religion, politics, psychology, and theater that reveals much about ancient Greek society and mentality. The legacy of Delphi extends far beyond ancient Greece. The concept of the oracle has influenced Western literature, art, and culture. For centuries, writers from ancient times to the present have drawn on Delphic themes, and the image of the prophetic priestess delivering cryptic wisdom, the oracle, appears in works by Sophocles, Euripides, and other ancient dramatists, and has been reimagined by modern authors. The idea that the future can be glimpsed through divine revelation, but only in ambiguous terms that require interpretation, remains a powerful narrative device. The Oracle of Delphi also raises profound questions about the nature of prophecy, fate, and free will. The Greeks believed that the future was not entirely fixed, but that certain outcomes were fated. While human choices still mattered, the oracle's prophecies often worked through self-fulfilling mechanisms, where the attempt to avoid a predicted outcome actually brought it about. The story of Oedipus, who killed his father and married his mother despite or because of efforts to prevent the prophecy, exemplifies this tragic pattern. These themes continue to resonate in contemporary discussions of determinism and human agency. In examining the Oracle of Delphi, we see how religious institutions can wield enormous influence in society. By claiming access to divine knowledge, the priests and Pythia of Delphi occupied a unique position that allowed them to shape political decisions, mediate conflicts, and accumulate wealth and power. whether the Pythia actually experienced genuine trance states, or whether the whole system was an elaborate performance. The oracle functioned effectively for centuries because people believed in its authenticity and power. This belief was reinforced by careful management of the oracle's reputation, selective memory of successful prophecies, and the ambiguous nature of the pronouncements that allowed multiple interpretations. The oracle also served important psychological and social functions for ancient Greeks in a world of uncertainty, where disease, war, and natural disasters could strike without warning. The oracle provided a sense that there was some order and meaning to events, that human actions could be aligned with divine. While consulting the oracle was a way of managing anxiety about the future and seeking reassurance that one was making the right decisions. The rituals and procedures surrounding consultation created a framework for careful deliberation and decision-making, even if the prophecy itself was ambiguous. Delphi's role as a pan-Hellenic sanctuary, where Greeks from different city-states could gather, also promoted a sense of shared Greek identity. Despite the political fragmentation of the Greek world into hundreds of independent and often hostile city-states, institutions like Delphi, the Olympic Games, and the Amphictyonic League created connections and common cultural reference points. The oracle's pronouncements sometimes encouraged cooperation among Greek states and discouraged conflicts that would weaken the Greek world as a whole, though it was not always successful in preventing wars. The relationship between Delphi and political power was complex. The oracle needed to maintain credibility by appearing neutral and divinely inspired, yet it also depended on the support and donations of powerful city-states and individuals. This created potential conflicts of interest and accusations that the oracle could be bribed or influenced. There are ancient accounts of attempts to manipulate the oracle through gifts or political pressure, and some prophecies do seem to have favored particular cities. However, the oracle's long-term success depended on maintaining a reputation for integrity and divine authority, so the priests had incentives to resist blatant corruption. The interpretive flexibility of Delphic prophecies was both a strength and a weakness. On one hand, it allowed the oracle to maintain its reputation, since failed prophecies could be reinterpreted as having been misunderstood rather than incorrect. This ambiguity also meant that consultants had to think carefully about the meaning of the prophecy and consider multiple possibilities, which could lead to more thoughtful decision-making. On the other hand, the cryptic nature of the prophecies sometimes led to disastrous misinterpretations, as in the case of Croesus. The Greeks were aware of this danger, and many stories and plays explore the theme of misunderstood oracles. The Oracle of Delphi represents one of the most successful religious institutions in ancient history, operating continuously for over 1,000 years and influencing events across the Mediterranean world. Its success was based on a combination of factors, including its spectacular natural setting, its mythological associations with Apollo, its careful management by the priests, its pan-Hellenic status, and the psychological and social needs fulfilled for consultants. The oracle provided a framework for decision-making, a source of legitimacy for political actions, and a connection to the divine that was deeply meaningful to ancient Greeks. In conclusion, the Oracle of Delphi was far more than a fortune-telling service. It was a complex institution that shaped ancient Greek history, culture, and thought. The prophecies delivered by the Pythia influenced major political and military decisions, guided colonization efforts, and provided moral and philosophical guidance. The ambiguous nature of these prophecies reflected Greek understandings of fate, free will, and the limitations of human knowledge, while also allowing the oracle to maintain its reputation. Over centuries, the sanctuary at Delphi served as a pan-Hellenic meeting place that promoted Greek unity and identity. Even as individual city-states competed for power and influence, the wealth and prestige accumulated at Delphi made it a target for conquest, but also ensured its survival through changing political circumstances. The oracle's eventual decline came not from loss of credibility, but from the rise of Christianity, which rejected pagan worship. Today, the ruins of Delphi stand as a testament to the power of religious belief and the enduring human desire to glimpse the future and align human actions with divine. While the Oracle of Delphi remains one of the most fascinating institutions of the ancient world, offering insights into Greek religion, politics, psychology, and culture that continue to captivate scholars and visitors alike.